into how these people think and understand what you are dealing with when you're talking to a Marxist, because 9 times out of 10, regardless if they think they're a Marxist or not, you're talking to a Marxist if you're on the other side of an issue, right? If you're here, if you're a liberty-minded individual, if you believe in, the basic human rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of property or happiness, however you wish to frame that, if you wish to, have your own manifest destiny, your own will to live your life the way you'd like to, well, you're going to have a problem with all those Marxists out there, because they think that there is only one singular way to live, and it is their way. And their faith tells them that anyone who stands in their way, they can destroy. So with that, we're going to play this clip right here. And this is about basically how Marxists are allowed to have a double standard, because in their mindset, they are the oppressed ones. This is called repressive tolerance. So again, I'm doing this so you guys, if you're not aware of these things, you can be more educated about it, you can understand, and you can combat these folks more efficiently by understanding them. You always need to know your enemy, who they are, how they think, and what weaknesses they have. What are the kinks in their armor?
Marcuse in 1965, though, writes an essay that is absolutely crucial to understanding the world that we live in. That's repressive tolerance.
By the way, this is from the Approximate Ideological Origins of Critical Race Theory video that I showed you earlier, just so you know where you can go watch the whole thing. This is a shorter clip. Guys, I don't think I have anything more than 5 minutes after this, or after that original one.
People who follow me will have listened to my 4-part podcast where I read through repressive tolerance in full and tried to explain it on the New Discourses podcast. If you haven't done that, you should check that out. It's a horrifying essay. We live in the logic of repressive tolerance. The thesis of repressive tolerance, this is, we're talking what I would call the second generation of critical theory. The first generation being this very theoretical thing from Horkheimer. The second generation being Marcuse's very activist, very driven mentality. The thesis statement of that is that movements from the left must be tolerated, extended tolerance, even when they are violent. Movements from the right must not be extended tolerance, even to the point of censoring, and as he says, pre-censoring them, so that the thought that might preserve the status quo cannot even enter the mind.
How Orwellian, right? And Orwell was writing about the Soviet Union. You'll hear tankies today state he was not, but that is 100%. And they'll say, well, no, Animal Farm was, but not 1984. Oh no, it absolutely was. And Orwell was writing in a way predictively of how society would be. I mean, look at the UK now with their CCTVs, the closed circuit television cameras all over the place. And I get it. The UK during the 90s especially was a really, really rough place. Tank was asking me on the Unjustified Memes about slapping somebody, because we were talking about, the whole Will Smith thing. And I said, well, actually, slap's a very good self-defense tool if you know how to do it right. I mean, I guarantee you I can knock you out with a slap. And it saves your hands. It's a lot easier to jam your thumb or bust your knuckle throwing a punch than if I smack you with my hand. And it's also very efficient at grabbing. And I was telling him, you should check out someone like Lee Morrison or Jeff Thompson, guys back in the day who were bouncers in the UK when people got stabbed a lot. And I believe Lee Morrison himself had been stabbed several times, had been in at least 6 knife encounters. Their stuff's very brutal, though. It's very upfront, it's very direct, because that's the atmosphere at the time. It had to be in order to survive, in order to keep the peace. So that played into itself. And then, you get this giant police state by the early 2000s. And it's quite crazy, but it's how it has gone. In any case, let's get back to the video.
He even admittedly says this is censorship, even pre-censorship to be sure, but, and then he qualifies it with something like the the existing media and social situation already censor left-wing thought, so it's fine. They get to retaliate. So we must tolerate everything from the left, including violence. We must not tolerate anything from the right. If you can't connect that to the last year of your life, I don't know how to help you. We had literal riots. We suspended a pandemic for riots, looting, and arson. We had the now Vice President of the United States publish and promote a bail them out of jail fund. We had corrupt district attorneys around the country in our cities refusing to prosecute radical uprisings from the left. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden's laptop story, which was true, was completely stricken from social media. You don't want them to even be able to form the thought. Parler was nuked from orbit because right-wing people happened to be there. Apparently what happened on January 6th, which mostly seemed to involve people walking around and parading indoors inside the Capitol after being let in, although there was obviously some rioting and violence outside, was the worst thing that's happened since the Civil War, or apparently since like a meteor struck and killed the dinosaurs or something, whatever the word of the day happens to be. So you get this impression that there's a little bit of a tilted playing field. Of course, what they're saying is that they're leveling the playing field because they believe themselves the permanent excluded underdog. This is core to their theory. They believe that left-wing radical thought is viciously suppressed by a society that doesn't want it because we don't. And therefore, the playing field is not level. It's not that they're wrong, it's that they're being suppressed. So we have to level the playing field by suppressing all right-wing everything to the point where you're not even allowed to hear the story. I got struck down on Facebook for sharing a 20-second clip of Anthony Fauci 1 year earlier saying, "Don't wear masks." The only commentary I added to that was Anthony Fauci 1 year ago, but I was spreading misinformation, even though I made a factual statement about that clip from like 60 Minutes or whatever it was. You get the impression that certain things are being repressed in the name of tolerance, whereas other things are being permitted in the name of tolerance and justice. We live in repressive tolerance.
And you really need to consider that because we do live in repressive tolerance. It's what's going on in the world today, guys. And so, this is the idea, again, getting back to the idea of Orwell, that war is peace, freedom is slavery. And, oh crap, I can't even remember the third one now. But regardless, you guys know the lines, right? War is peace, freedom is slavery. I can't think of what the third one is. But the thing is that it doesn't matter what the truth is. And this actually gets into postmodernism, we'll talk about here in a bit. But it matters that we are going in the right historical direction. We are on the right side of history, bringing about the utopia and the shedding of all responsibility, the libertine, which is what all this is about, guys. This is libertinism. I'm beginning to believe, very much so, that the false prophet of the book of Revelations is actually Karl Marx. Now, I could be wrong. It's secular humanism is the problem that we are facing. This happened during the Enlightenment. People began to lose their faith in God. For a long time in history, in recent history, I should say, in the 20th century, the 19th and the 20th century, actually, because we didn't find certain archaeological findings that were, supposed to be biblical historical events, they would deny that those things ever existed, which is absurd because to find something from thousands of years ago is like rare. I mean, let's just be honest, guys. Things fade away. That's part of the whole thing of entropy, right? Where everything's fading away, everything is dying in this universe. But they would deny these things, and then you would get people like, let's say, Leo Tolstoy, who writes a book called Confession. Now, in the Confession, he's talking about how he came to Christianity himself, but he was a 19th century intellectual, and obviously one of the greatest writers ever. Um, very insightful man, and he was a snob about the things that he knew, and he was enlightened, and yet he wanted to die. He was so nihilistic. He wanted to kill himself every single day. It's a very powerful read, his confession. And he didn't have the courage to do it. And finally, he started to relate to regular people, the working class, the average everyday Joe. And what he found in that was their basic, I just want to work to get by, I want to provide for my family, and I believe and follow God, and I mean, and within that, I mean to be a force of good in this world and do things good for other people. And it changed his life. It literally changed his life. But see, Tolstoy before that was part of the bourgeois. He wasn't maybe the richest of the rich, but he was quite well off, right? He was an artist and a writer, right? And as the bourgeois, as the lower level at least of them, he was like everyone we have today in the upper middle class who is a Marxist, because that's what this is. This is a modern phenomenon of people who have lost their connection to God, or they hate God. They feel disenfranchised. They're rich, but they're not as rich as other people. Therefore, they envy them, and they must make those people suffer because they're not as good as them, right? That's what this is about.